sometimes the best way to combat our emotions is just to say, you know what? My mind is stronger than my emotions today. And I'm going to tell my body what I'm doing. I'm going to tell my brain what we're doing. I'm going to sit down and attack this task, whatever that is. If your mind is stronger than your emotions, you can reach goals. You can make strides towards the life that you want to live. Woo-wee! We are getting after it again, and I'm happy to be back. I apologize for a little hiatus. I was down in Vegas for about a week, and I was just didn't have a lot of time to sit down. And to be very honest, and this is a little vulnerable right here, I didn't have a lot of motivation to sit down and record a podcast. It takes a lot of effort, and I have to have a lot of brain power when I'm doing it. I had a very busy week, and so it was just difficult to muster the will to sit down and actually just have a podcast. And the biggest thing that I've just had to do is just sit down and confront the work. So I'm happy to be back. I apologize again for taking a little break, but it was much needed, and it was kind of nice to spend time in Vegas with my wife. She's down there training to become an Allegiant pilot right now. So I'll be splitting my time in Utah and Vegas. So it's going to be a good time. And I'm sure I'll have lots of stories to tell. I guess I can open it up with this. Last night we went to the Venetian, the casino in Vegas, the famous Venetian, and we're just walking around. And really, the people in Vegas are just a different breed. It's hard to articulate what I think about those people, but rest assured, they give you good stories, right? They definitely keep you on your toes. So we can thank them for that. But yeah, we went to the Venetian, just had a nice time going to dinner there. And actually, a little story here. The Venetian, I went to a trade show a while back, and I was in Vegas on my way down to spend time with my family for Christmas. And my friend at the time, wife now, Allie, shout out to Allie, she came and met me in Vegas, and we went and we had dinner together. We walked around, we hung out for a bit, we cruised the strip, everything that you do in Vegas. And last night we went to the same spot that we went before we started dating. And it was just kind of fun. Everything's full circle, and now we're living there. It's kind of wild. But yeah, just nice to spend some time with her. So I'm ready to get back after it, though, ready to double down and really get some good content out there. And I figured one of the best ways that you guys could get to know me better is if I just answer a few questions. I have 10 questions that I'm going to run through today that kind of talk about things that I'm, one, interested in, two, give you some background into who I am and at least provide a little bit of context into why I am the way that I am, and just ultimately maybe shed some light on that. So I'm excited for this episode. I think it's going to be an interesting test. I've never done anything like this before. But I want to start out with question number one is, can you share a moment in your life that ignited your passion for self-improvement and personal growth? I've talked on this podcast a little bit about my first experience with understanding how to cultivate discipline. But really what it comes down to is I read Extreme Ownership when I was first in college. I'd listened to Jocko Willink on Interviews podcast before, and I figured it was time to give it a shot, sit down and actually read the book. I began to understand that if I wanted anything in my life, it was going to have to take discipline to achieve that said thing. And that could be any part of my life. That could be my fitness goals, professional goals, spiritual goals, family goals, whatever it is. If you want to get something done or obtain something in life, it's going to require discipline, and it's going to require a lot of hard work. And that's, to me, what taking extreme ownership means, is that you understand that the result you obtain is directly linked to how much effort you're willing to put in. And sometimes that's not the case. Like, there are hard workers out there. And Joe Rogan always gives the example of like, hey, there's someone who's taking out the trash that's he has a hard job that's not getting paid a lot, that he works hard every single day, but isn't getting paid a lot. But there's someone who sits at a desk in the Twitter office and gets paid to make vlogs about their day, right? And so you could say that that's arbitrary, right? One person's hard work isn't the same as someone else's hard work. But the point I'm trying to make is if you are dedicated to something, if you have a goal that you want to accomplish, then the results you will get will be directly linked to how much effort you put into that goal. And I mentioned last podcast, I read Relentless, and I just finished Tim Grover's second book called Winning. But in those two books, he makes it very clear that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, all these great athletes who were in the NBA, who were stars in the league, they understood that if they wanted to outperform their competitors, they needed to put in more work than their competitors. They understood that the work was not pretty. It was hard. It was difficult. It was a grind. And I'm sure that's something that you face at times. Like I almost guarantee it, that there's times when you're trying to pursue goals that you're like, man, I feel like I haven't done a thing. Why do I know that that's true? Because I feel the same way. Literally, we are all humans. We feel the same emotions. And sometimes the best way to combat our emotions is just to say, you know what? My mind is stronger than my emotions today. And I'm going to tell my body what I'm doing. I'm going to tell my brain what we're doing. I'm going to sit down and attack this task, whatever that is. If your mind is stronger than your emotions, you can reach goals. You can make strides towards the life that you want to live and become the person that you want to become. Question number 2, how do you define success, and how has this definition evolved over your career? And I want to focus on the last piece of that question. How has it evolved over your career? Now, I had my brother Drew on the podcast on episode 61. If you haven't heard that one, go back and listen to it because he says some great things. And I asked him this question, is how do you define success? And what he said changed how I view success. He said success to him is growth. And I would agree. But also I would say that success means that I'm able to bring other people up to reach their goals too. And it's important to succeed for yourself because you need to take care of your family. You need to take care of your friends, people that you love. And I think oftentimes when people think of success, they think it's just on them, right? Like if I'm a successful person, that only applies to me. That only affects me. No, that's not the case. How I define success is growth, like my brother, but growth in all areas of my life. And so if I'm successful in my marriage, that means we're growing together. That means we are aligned in the same goals. We have the same things that we want to accomplish. That's what growth in my marriage looks like. Now, Allie and I are getting closer. We become more and more united and everything like that. With fitness, it's growth. It's can I last longer on a run? Can I lift more in the gym? And that's easy to measure because there's a number tied to it. But what about spiritual growth? Like, am I getting closer to God? Am I spending time reading and trying to learn and educate myself? That's all growth. And that's how I would define success. But success means nothing if you don't share it with other people. That's one thing that I have been passionate about for as long as I can remember is I've always had this goal in my head, and this might be a self-conceited goal. You might think that this is, a little over the top, but whatever. This has been my goal, is to make enough money that I can take care of myself, my family, and then just give it all away. Like give it to the people that need it. Find ways that I can go and lift up those that might need some help or be a resource to someone. That's my goal. And that's how I would define success is being there for other people and growing in all the other areas of your life. Question number 3. Running is a significant part of your life. Can you describe how this journey began and what it means to you? Now, I often hear people laugh at me when I tell them I'm a runner, or they'll say things like, oh man, I can never do that. That's something I would never try. Why would I put my body through a run? I'm not going to go out and just decide to run. Like, are you crazy? And I always want to look at them and just say, are you crazy not to run? Like, there's so many benefits from it. Mental clarity, your body feels good, you're in shape, your heart's healthy, you have time to think on your runs. There's always that runner's high afterwards where you feel accomplished, you feel like you did something hard. Why would you not want that? Because running, I tell Allie this all the time, she makes fun of me, but it's the perfect metaphor for life. And I was talking to my brother about this today during our coaching call, is every run, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. There's going to be times when you're like, how much longer do I have? And there's going to be times like, dang it, I only have that much longer. It sounds weird, but it's true. And it happens to everyone who runs. And shout out to everyone who runs because it's legit. But it's the greatest metaphor for life, because if you can learn how to push past the pain, if you can learn how to endure and make the most out of the situation, tell me how you can't apply that to if you're going through a difficult financial time, or if you're going through a difficult family struggle. Like, if you're able to learn how to endure through running, maybe you can learn how to endure or make the most out of the situation that you're currently in. That might take some self-reflection. And again, that's why I preach about journaling, because that allows you to sit down and think. But it's powerful. And running gives me that edge. It keeps me sharp. And really how I got into running was the first Team Tim race I attended and participated in Carlsbad, California, 2023. And I was out there. I was trying to impress Allie. This is like when we first started dating. So I was like, I'm the boyfriend. I got to really show up and make everyone proud. But what I fell in love with is we all got to our Airbnb and we were just having fun together. We were all there for the same reason. We were all going to run the next day. But we were having so much fun together. We were making memories. And there is a community piece about running that I fell in love with as soon as I did my first half marathon. It was something I never anticipated I would fall in love with as much as I did. But that's really what got me into running. And it's become a significant part of my life because it's never easy. And I always have to stay on top of it. Like I said, it makes me sharp because there's never one day when I get to take a rest. Because if I do, that day turns into 2. That 2 turns into 3. And then my running fitness will start to deteriorate and it's going to be harder to go on the next one. So, yeah. Question number 4, how do you stay motivated on days when the last thing you want to do is put on your running shoes? That's tough because that happens more often than you would think. And after I just got off my soapbox saying how much I loved running or how much I love running and all that stuff, there are days when it's just difficult to confront it. And it's kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast. I didn't have a lot of motivation this past week to record. And that same thing happens with running, which again, perfect metaphor for life, right? Is we're not always going to be motivated to do the thing that we know we need to. And the point is, going back to letting your mind be stronger than your emotions, if it's a goal you have, don't let it be another option. Like, don't let yourself have an out. If training is on the calendar, make sure you train. And that's what I have to tell myself, is if I have a workout planned, I need to go get it done. Sometimes it's insanely hard. Yes, there's no getting around that. The days of training are long, they're strenuous on my body, and I'm tired a lot. That said, I want to succeed in running. I want to be the best runner I can be. And that means putting short-term desires aside for the long-term result. Winning is hard, the work is relentless, but the result is indescribable. When I ran my sub-3 marathon, you didn't see the months of preparation that went into it. But there were days when I didn't want to put my shoes on. But I knew that that goal was more important to me than taking a rest day. And so I laced up and I got ready. I stretched and I would go on runs and I would force myself to do it and find ways that I was getting better through that experience. And the thing that I would say is if you struggle to find motivation, don't rely on motivation. Just dig down deep and say, this is what I said I was going to do. I'm going to do it. And then just go execute. And it's like that 10-minute rule I've mentioned on this podcast. After you start for 10 minutes, I can almost guarantee you that you will start to ease into it and be like, you know what? This is not as bad as I thought it was. This feels good. I can do this. And then you'll just keep going. And so that's the biggest thing that I would say is on the days that I don't have motivation, I just start. And if I can't last longer than 10 minutes, then maybe I do need a rest day and I need to go back to the drawing board or whatever needs to happen. But just be very in tune with your body and be very in tune with your thoughts. Control your thoughts. Don't let them get out of hand. Because if you keep, here's an example. You wake up and you have a run or you have a workout that you know you need to do before work. And it's cold outside. If you let your brain think, maybe I'll just stay in bed for 5 more minutes, that 5 minutes, you'll start thinking like, oh, that 5 minutes was way too fast. I need 10. And then you'll start to snowball. So you need to be disciplined with your thoughts. That's something that's very important. That's a lesson that I've been learning recently is that we control what we think about. And in order to control that, it takes discipline. And it's like what I talk about all the time with discipline and consistency, right? So you have to be disciplined to control your thoughts and consistent in controlling them and finding ways that you can change how you think about things or change your view on things, whatever that is. But make sure that you are controlling your thoughts. The only person that you can control is you. You can control what you think about. You can control what you do, but you can't control anyone else. So take power in the fact that you have full control of yourself and go do whatever you want to do. Wow, got a little heated there, but it's important. That's why. Question number 5. Could you share a particularly memorable running experience and the lesson it taught you? Yes, I can. And we're going to go back to even before Team Tim, anything like that. This is when I was sick. So my sister-in-law, Emily, who's a badass, she's the first one that was like, hey, let's do a half marathon. And I was like, yep, let's do it. I want to do it. Sure. And so I started running, and this was again back in like 2021. So I was like, you know what? I got to start training for this half marathon. It's the middle of summer in Arizona. And I was like, well, I guess I could just go run on the treadmill because Arizona in the summertime is like 120, and I wasn't about to go run my first run outside in 120. So I go to this gym. It's called Mountainside Fitness. I walk in, everyone's sweaty. And because it's the middle of summer, everyone's extra sweaty and gross. And it's just like a steamy bath as I walk into this gym. Like you open up the door and it's like, whoa, kind of takes your breath away a little bit. It just smells like beef and cheese and humidity, pretty much like Florida. And I walk into Florida and I'm walking to the treadmill. And I do some little stretches, like loosen up my hamstrings a bit, maybe do the little classic quad stretch, just getting in the zone, right? And I just remember this run was so hard. It was so difficult. I didn't really say how long I was going to do it. I ended up running 7 miles. And get this, my pace was 11:25 per mile. So anyone who says, I can't run, I'm not a runner, I want to tell you that you are, because here was me in 2021 running 7 miles at an 11:25 pace. Fast forward to February 2024, I ran a sub-3 marathon at a 6:48 pace. 6:48 pace. That's a huge difference. But again, people don't see the work that goes in on a daily basis to get to that point, and the consistency that's required and the discipline that is needed. But that stood out to me because I had never ran more than 7 miles in my life. And it was something I was just so pumped about. The lesson it taught me was that if you work hard at something that isn't easy, you'll learn about yourself and learn what you're capable of. So that little 7 mile run opened up the door for me to be like, what else can I do? Maybe I can be a runner. Maybe this is something that I can do. And I learned that, yes, it is, if you are consistent and disciplined. Question number 6. Could you give an example of a habit or a routine that has significantly contributed to your growth? Well, that's hard, but I think for one that can be applied to anyone is, I would say one routine that has significantly shaped my life has been listening to podcasts or books on a regular basis. I have replaced music for learning and educating myself for the most part. Obviously, sometimes I still need to crank the Suicide Boys and get in the gym and lift some heavy weights. But don't get me wrong. I love music, and I still make it an important part of my life. Like my dad, we'd cruise around in the car. And he'd be blaring all sorts of music. So I grew up listening to like everything as a kid. And I love music. So it's very important to me. But I've realized that if I want to continue to grow and learn about myself, gain some personal development, whatever that is, you need to learn. And it's hard to find time in the day to sit down and read a book, right? We live in a world that's so fast paced that it's really difficult to do that. And so learning is a very much important thing in my life than listening to music is. And so instead, I've just supplemented it with podcasts and audiobooks. And it allows me to look at things from other people's perspectives, or to open my mind about certain topics or certain things that have happened. I heard this quote a while back that was like something along the lines of, if you feel like you're stuck, read something, because other people's opinions will open up a new world to you. And I feel like that's the case. Podcasts and audiobooks, and it allows me to question myself, question my own beliefs, either get stronger in those beliefs or be willing to change them. But it's a simple thing to do. You can listen while you drive. You can listen to it while you do chores, on a walk, workout. If you're laying down, just taking it easy. Shout out to the Outdoor Boys YouTube channel. He always says, all right, guys, about to wrap up for the night. Going to eat some macadamia nuts and listen to an audiobook. So, he's just like chilling out, listening to audiobooks, and you can do the same thing. But this simple habit has become tremendous in my own personal development and growth, just because I'm able to learn and take years of experience off my own plate and learn from what other people have done. We have access to a wealth of knowledge that sometimes not sometimes, almost all the time we take for granted. And you just need to make it more applicable into your life and more of a important part of your life. And so I would say that's a habit and a routine that has really impacted me for the greater and for the better. But I've learned so much through podcasts, and some of my favorites, Modern Wisdom by Chris Williamson. That's a great one. He has a lot of interesting people on, who from like philosophy to comedians, everything. I love the Joe Rogan podcast just because of the guests that he's able to bring on. The Nick Bare podcast, the Founders podcast, the Founders podcast is done by David Senra. But he pretty much goes back and he reads biographies, he reads books about all these great people, and then finds things that he can apply to our lives, or we can apply to our lives. In terms of audiobooks, I would say go listen to Winning and Relentless by Tim Grover. Those are two huge books that have been on my mind recently. I just listened to Mind Shift, which is all about being open-minded, being willing to change your stance on things. Listening to Churchill. This is a 50-hour audiobook, so I'm nowhere near being done. I have 47 hours left, so that's pretty good. The 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene is a good book. That one is really interesting just because obviously we're not fighting real wars, but he talks about how tactics and strategies that were done from people like Napoleon to all these other great rulers. He talks about Churchill in that book. But all these people, they had strategies that we can apply to our own lives to help us win the battles of life. That's really what it's about. So try to learn. That's what I would say, is find things that you like listening to, and you'll be surprised what you pick up. Even if it's like a comedy podcast, if you're listening to other people talk, I can almost guarantee you'll have a more open mind. So try it out. It's changed my life, and I'm sure it can change yours. That's why I have a podcast, guys, because I was inspired so many times by all these people I would listen to. And I've told the story before of why I started, but I would sit in my bed because I couldn't do anything. I was sick, and I would just listen to podcasts, and I would learn. And I was like, if I can do that for someone else and be that resource for someone and inspire someone, then I'll consider myself successful. It's like that growth question again. Anyways, question number 7. Is there a figure from history or contemporary times whose life or philosophy deeply influences you? Well, there's a lot. For this purpose, I'm not going to include any of my family members or anyone that I actually know. Like, I'm not going to say mentors. But there's a lot of people I could name. But for the time being, and for the most that are top of mind right now, probably because I'm reading books about them, Winston Churchill. The reason being is he showed so much self-confidence, and he believed in himself more than anybody who I've ever studied. He had so much self-belief from a very young age that he was destined for greatness. When he went off to go fight in the Boer Wars, he told himself that he was going to be Prime Minister of Great Britain, and that was his destiny. And there's this quote, I have to share it because I think it's probably one of the most badass quotes I've ever heard in my entire life. But it's from Winston Churchill, and he's fighting in the war, and he says this, because he believes legitimately that he's going to be the next Prime Minister of Great Britain at some point in his life. He says, "I'm so conceited, I do not believe the gods would create so potent a being as myself for so prosaic an ending, to be killed in combat." Pretty much this guy says he's so conceited that he doesn't believe God would create someone as powerful as Winston Churchill to be killed in combat. And obviously that sounds a little reckless, but that's pretty badass. The other thing I love about Winston Churchill is he always had this mantra that he lived by, to always choose the harder decision over the easier ones, because in those times are when the greatest lessons were learned. And he was born to a very prominent family, and he pretty much had everything set up for him in his entire life. Like, he didn't have to work. He didn't have to really do anything. Winston Churchill could have just lived a lavish life being the son of a duke. And he understood from an early age that in order to live life to the fullest, it's better to choose the harder right than the easier wrong. It's better to go and try something difficult than it is to take the easy path and let things pass over. That is something I really admire Winston Churchill about. And I think you can see the evidence of how that plays into how he pretty much helped defeat the Nazis. Like, that's pretty sweet. That's cool. The other person I would say is Michael Jordan. And I used to really never understand Michael Jordan. People would say he's the greatest of all time. But one thing that I learned from reading those two books, Relentless and Winning, is that he had work ethic that no one else I've studied really has besides David Goggins. David Goggins is a different animal, though. But Michael Jordan had almost that same self-belief that Winston Churchill had, that he knew he could do hard things. He knew that the value of putting yourself out there and doing difficult things is much better than the alternative, right? And he was able to lead people. Sometimes that, like, don't get me wrong, sometimes he was villainous in the way that he would lead people. He would cuss them out, tell them how it is, but he would always get the end result, which was winning. And his just determination, discipline is something I really admire, and his work ethic. And so those are two people, at least just right now. Obviously, there's others, but like Jocko Willink is top of the list. Nick Bear, again, top of the list. These are all people who I've learned so much from, and who I would say their life philosophy has rubbed off on me in some aspect, especially Jocko. So Jocko, if you ever want to come on this podcast, you have an open invitation. I will give you a sparkling water if you join my podcast. If you come on here, you're going to get a sparkling water. So there's my reach out to Jocko. He already has energy drinks and stuff, but he doesn't have sparkling water. So can you share, question 8, can you share a story of someone who embodies your ideals of growth and self-improvement? Yes. This is a story about my wife. She is the embodiment of someone who wants to always grow and focus on self-improvement. And it doesn't take much to see if you just observe her for a little bit. What I mean by that is she's always looking to improve. When we first started dating, she was not a runner, and now she's training to qualify for Boston. Well, she says she wasn't a runner. She did run. Now she's qualifying for Boston in September. She's going to. I know she's going to hate me for saying that, but she's going to. She's training to become a pilot right now for 3 months in Allegiant. She has these study habits that don't compare to anyone else I've ever seen. She will sit down, write out things on note cards, highlight them, color code them, and you can ask her anything and she will just remember it right away. She's always looking up information on Google. If she doesn't know something, she will look it up. But she is someone who embodies the same ideals that I do, which is probably why we got married. And she's everything to me. She's such a good example. And if there's any day that I lose motivation, I look at my wife because she's in the same boat I am. She has the same goals that I do. And she's never complains. She just puts one step in front of the other, gets shiz done. She's a beast. And I really admire her for that. So there you go. Question number 9, looking ahead, what are some areas of personal growth you're excited to explore further? I would say biographies, honestly. I feel like there's a lot that can be learned from other people's stories and other people's history that we can apply to our own lives and learn from and get better at as a result from. And so biographies. And right now I'm reading Elon Musk's biography by Walter Isaacson. Fascinating. But I feel like the reason I want to read biographies more is you learn from these people's lives. Like biographies are done about people who have done extraordinary things. And so if you can learn what made them extraordinary and apply some of those principles to your life, how much better can you be? And that's what I would say is one area I'm looking forward to. Another is I want to really hone in on my coaching. I've been coaching my cousin, my brother, my mom, and my mother-in-law. And that's something that I've taken a lot of satisfaction in, is seeing people progress and reach their goals and call me excited. Like my brother calls me today and he said some profanity words, I guess I'll say. But he was so pumped up because he ran 11 miles at a 9:17 pace. Forgive me if I got that wrong, Drew. But that wasn't anywhere near where he would be. And this is the same guy that told me in December I will never run. So pretty cool. I'm excited about that. And then question 10, how do you plan to use what you've learned from running, discipline, and the lives of admirable people to influence your future? I think that just kind of goes into what I've been saying. Like, if I'm able to sit down, take what I learn, and then go help someone who just needs a little extra hand or who might need a little bit of reassurance or some motivation, and I can be that resource to them, I'll consider my life a success, and I'll consider that to be a good return. And we're all in this life together. We all have problems. We all struggle. And if I can make someone's life easier by either motivating them, inspiring them, helping them, being there to support them, then that's what I think a good, successful life should be. It's all about helping those around you and working together to make the world a better place. Because when my kids, here's really how I plan to use what I've learned, is to teach my kids, to teach them the principles that should make them successful. Teach them the importance and the value of hard work and working hard towards something and finally seeing the results in the end. Because everything from running, everything from being disciplined, and everything from learning from admirable people comes from accomplishing great tasks. It comes from trying hard things and learning from them, becoming better through them. And so that's what I would say is I want to learn more. I want to continue to keep learning so I can pass these lessons on to my future kids. I want my kids to have a podcast that's like Getting After It 2.0, where my kids are like, my dad was only running ultra marathons, and I'm out here running ultra marathons with a 25-pound rucksack on my back, and I have 2 hours to finish 30 miles. I don't know. Maybe my kids will be that much of a beast, guarantee it. But that's what I would say is I would just want to learn, keep learning, keep applying these principles, and then teach it to my kids. So there you have it. There's a quick little episode, quick little get to know Brett a little better episode maybe. Stay tuned. Chapter 3 of my book podcast, Working Copy, is going to be coming out on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. But I appreciate everyone listening to this. Thank you again for just taking the time to spend some time with me and listen to what I have to say, because sometimes I don't think it's important, but I know that it can help. So I appreciate everyone tuning in. And until next time, everybody, you know what to do. Keep getting after it.